May 2, 2011. A walled compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, less than a mile from that country's most prestigious military academy. It is just past midnight. Two modified Black Hawk helicopters cross the border undetected, flying low through mountain valleys to avoid radar. Aboard them, 23 members of the U.S. Navy's most secretive unit, SEAL Team 6. Their target has been hiding in this compound for years, in a 3-story house with 12-foot walls, no telephone line, no internet connection, and windows that had been deliberately blacked out. The operation will last under 40 minutes. At the end of it, the most wanted man in modern history will be dead. He will not have said a single word that anyone captured, recorded, or later reported as his final statement. No trial, no speech. No last defiant sentence for the cameras. Just silence, and then, hours later, a president stepping in front of a podium to confirm it was over. Osama bin Laden was born in 1957 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, one of more than 50 children of Mohammed bin Laden, a construction magnate whose company built some of the most significant infrastructure in the Saudi kingdom, including extensive renovation work on Islam's holiest sites in Mecca and Medina. He grew up in extraordinary wealth. He studied economics and business administration at university in Jeddah, where he was increasingly drawn to Islamist political thought circulating on campus at the time. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. Bin Laden, then in his early 20s, traveled to the region to support the Afghan resistance, first through funding and logistics, later through direct organizational involvement in the war effort. Over the following decade, he became a central figure in the network of fighters, financiers, and foreign volunteers supporting the anti-Soviet insurgency. By the time Soviet forces withdrew in 1989, bin Laden had built something more lasting than a wartime alliance. He had built an organization and a worldview. In 1988, he was involved in founding what would become known as al-Qaeda, intended initially as a network to organize and coordinate Arab fighters who had taken part in the Afghan war. The 1990s transformed bin Laden from a wartime organizer into something the United States government would eventually classify as its most significant security threat. He returned to Saudi Arabia after the Afghan war, but his relationship with the Saudi government deteriorated sharply following the 1990 Gulf War, when he objected publicly to the Saudi government's decision to allow American troops to be stationed in the kingdom to counter Iraq. He viewed the presence of non-Muslim military forces near Islam's holiest sites as a profound violation. He was expelled from Saudi Arabia in the early 1990s and relocated to Sudan, where he continued to build out al-Qaeda's organizational and financial networks. Under pressure from the United States and Saudi Arabia, Sudan expelled him in 1996, and he returned to Afghanistan, where the Taliban, then consolidating control over most of the country, provided him safe haven. From Afghanistan, bin Laden issued a series of public declarations calling for attacks against American military and civilian targets, framing his campaign as a defensive religious obligation against what he characterized as American aggression in the Muslim world. In 1998, al-Qaeda carried out near-simultaneous bombings of the U.S. embassies in Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, killing over 200 people, the vast majority of them African civilians. The attacks placed bin Laden on the FBI's list of most wanted terrorists and prompted American cruise missile strikes against suspected al-Qaeda training camps in Afghanistan. None of it stopped what was already in motion. On the morning of September 11, 2001, 19 al-Qaeda operatives hijacked 4 commercial airliners in the United States. 2 were flown into the World Trade Center towers in New York City. 1 struck the Pentagon, A fourth crashed in a field in Pennsylvania after passengers attempted to retake control of the aircraft. Nearly 3,000 people were killed that morning, the deadliest terrorist attack in modern history, and the deadliest attack of any kind ever carried out on American soil. Bin Laden did not immediately claim responsibility, but within weeks, intelligence agencies and independent investigators had traced the plot conclusively back to al-Qaeda's leadership structure. In a videotape released later that year, Bin Laden acknowledged foreknowledge of the attacks. The United States, along with a coalition of international allies, invaded Afghanistan within a month, aiming to dismantle al-Qaeda's infrastructure and remove the Taliban government that had sheltered it. Bin Laden escaped a major American assault on the Tora Bora Cave complex in December 2001 and disappeared from public confirmation of his location for years afterward, surfacing only periodically in audio and video messages released to media outlets, most of which could not be definitively geolocated. For nearly a decade, he became something close to a ghost, the most intensively hunted individual on Earth, with a $25 million American bounty on his location, and yet functionally untraceable. By 2010, American intelligence agencies had narrowed their search using a critical piece of information: the identity and movements of a trusted courier believed to be in direct contact with Bin Laden. Surveillance of the courier eventually led CIA analysts to a large, unusually fortified compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, a city notable for its significant Pakistani military presence, located roughly 75 miles from Islamabad. The compound stood out immediately upon analysis. It was roughly 8 times larger than any neighboring property, surrounded by walls up to 18 feet high topped with barbed wire, with an additional interior privacy wall blocking any view of the main residence's third-floor balcony. It had no telephone or internet service, an unusual choice for a property of its value, and its residents burned their trash rather than putting it out for collection, avoiding the routine external contact that habit would have created. For months, American intelligence worked without full certainty as to whether a high-value target, potentially Bin Laden himself, was actually residing there. In late April 2011, President Barack Obama authorized a special operations raid to be carried out by U.S. Navy SEALs, rather than a standoff airstrike, specifically to allow for the possibility of positive identification of the target's remains. The operation launched from a base in Afghanistan in the early hours of May 2, 2011, local time. 2 specially modified stealth helicopters carried the assault team across the border into Pakistani airspace undetected by that country's air defense systems, according to official American accounts. One of the helicopters suffered a hard landing inside the compound's courtyard due to unexpected aerodynamic conditions caused by the high perimeter walls, though no team members were seriously injured. The assault team breached the compound and moved through it methodically, encountering resistance from other adult male residents on the lower floors before reaching the top floor of the main residence. According to accounts provided by U.S. officials in the aftermath, Bin Laden was located on the 3rd floor. Descriptions of the final moments have varied somewhat across different officials' public statements over the following days and years, with some early accounts describing an armed standoff that were later revised. The consistent element across nearly all official accounts: Bin Laden was shot and killed by members of the assault team within the compound, and no member of the raid team was killed or seriously wounded in the operation. The entire assault, from helicopter touchdown to extraction, lasted under 40 minutes. There is no verified public record, no recording, no credible eyewitness account released to media, no document of Bin Laden speaking any final words during the raid. Whatever was said inside that house in those final minutes has never been made part of the public record in any officially corroborated form. Bin Laden's body was flown by helicopter to the USS Carl Vinson, an American aircraft carrier operating in the Arabian Sea. According to the Pentagon, he was given a religious funeral rite performed aboard the ship before his body was buried at sea within 24 hours of his death. A decision the administration stated was made in accordance with Islamic tradition requiring burial within a day, and to avoid creating a fixed gravesite that could become a pilgrimage location for sympathizers. No photographs of his body were ever publicly released. President Obama, in his decision not to release the images, cited concerns that graphic photographs could be used as propaganda or incite further violence. That evening, in a nationally televised address, President Obama announced to the American public and the world that Osama bin Laden had been killed. Crowds gathered spontaneously outside the White House and at the site of the former World Trade Center in New York, marking what many described as a symbolic close to a manhunt that had defined nearly a decade of American foreign policy. The absence of any recorded final statement stood in stark contrast to the extensive paper and video trail bin Laden had left throughout his life. Years of recorded messages, interviews, and declarations, all suddenly cut off in a moment that produced no equivalent record at all. Every subject in this series has left behind some form of final testimony, a letter, a defiant statement, a song, a plea. Words that, however brief, gave history something to hold on to in the last moments of a life that had shaped the world around it. Osama bin Laden left none of that. What ended in that compound in Abbottabad ended in near-total silence. No trial to attend, no camera capturing a final expression, no words anyone can verify he spoke as the raid closed in around him. For a man whose entire public life had been constructed through message after message, broadcast to the world across 2 decades, his final moment was the one thing he never controlled, and the one thing no recording ever captured. The most searched-for man on Earth for almost 10 years ended, in the end, with nothing left to say, or nothing anyone will ever be able to prove he said.